Rent controls failed in Ireland. So why are the Greens asking for them? Let's have a look. Hello everyone, Florian here and welcome to another episode of HeiseSays. Grab your ice-cold stein of water, it's still getting bloody hot in Queensland, and let's talk about rent controls because, well, there's an article that's just appeared. A report claims rent controls have backfired and worsened the crisis in Ireland. So here we have another example how rent controls failed. But that doesn't stop everyone's favourite political party, well, here in Australia, calling for interventions in the rental market. Renters need immediate rent freeze in the face of continued rent hikes. And this was, well, the beginning of this year, not that long ago, last month. But, you know, it's not surprising that the Greens are calling for this when, well, these things have failed again and again and again. Now, why do they fail? Let's have a look at this little presentation I was talking about here on rent controls. Now, private rental affordability. It's, this graph graphically shows the private rental affordability across Australia's major cities. It's a bit outdated. It's gotten worse than that. But it's bad in... Wait, let me get the highlighter here. You can see it's bad in Brisbane. The only place it was any good was in Perth, to be quite honest. But here's the problem. When you have people calling for rent controls, it messes with the market. Now, in an ideal market, which I know we don't have, but you've got demand for rented housing and you've got the supply of rented housing, at least the short-run supply of rented housing. And you've got the price and the quantity, and they reach an equilibrium level where people are willing to pay P1 and that meets the quantity. Now, let's say the Greens get in and say, we're going to get this price freeze. So they're going to put a cap on rent. They're going to put a cap on rent. So that means the market will be distorted. The maximum rent you can return from your investment property is going to be capped by what the Greens say. And that disincentivizes people to actually put property on the market. It disincentivizes people to build properties to rent. It disincentivizes people to maintain their properties. It creates an excess of demand. So we can see here, this is the maximum rent. So the demand for housing, because the price is only here, it's lower than P1. The price is lower. So more people want the rent. So now you've got people at Q2 wanting to rent the property. But then it's all the property investors are going, you know what, I'm not putting up with this bullshit. I'm not dealing with this legislation. I don't want to have to do all the Greens paperwork. I don't want to have to deal with people. So I'll just sit on my property. I don't need to rent it out. I can afford to take the loss and negative gear it. Why not? So that means there is a decrease in the quantity of properties available. It goes down to Q3. But remember, Q2 is now where people want to rent it. So there's a gap. There is a gap, everyone. And what happens is it causes a fall in rental supply. So the supply curve, it shifts over here. So it goes down. And it's even worse. Some landlords leave the market, yeah. And demand for rental housing is still high. So it creates both, I'd say. It creates a reduction in supply and then a black market where people pay more in rent. So it just creates a mess. This never works. It creates problems wherever it goes. So the fact that our Greens are calling for it is concerning. And here we have more evidence, real-world, contemporary evidence from Ireland where it's failed. Now, we have our politicians here in Australia calling for these type of interventions in the market. Now, we've got evidence that these interventions fail. So maybe it's more evidence that the politicians that are calling for this aren't up for the job. Maybe they just don't have the intellectual capacity to understand the implications for what they're calling for. They can only zoom in on the micro. They don't understand the full big picture. That's the only way I can rationalize what these people are arguing for. Because, I mean, I understand why they want to have rent controls because unaffordable housing is frustrating. And for renters, people can get into housing stress. But this isn't the solution. This is just going to cause more problems in the long run. Maybe they just don't see that. I guess, you know, they're not really educated on these things, are they? So, a study claims rent pressure zones have added to rent pressures. Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Government measures to control rent have backfired and in many cases have led to an increase in rents, a new report has claimed. Now, this is not new. This is well known. Well known. But, I mean, do we just forget? Do people just not learn from history? I suspect that's why we're heading so hard left these days. Lack of knowledge. The study by economist Jim Power suggests that rent pressure zones introduced in 2016 to limit rent price increases have resulted in significant rent rigidities. I'll learn to speak one day. And an inefficient two-tier system where the proper maintenance of rental properties is no longer economically viable. Oh, but who said that'll happen? This isn't new. This is not new. It's just the same shit happening again. I mean, do we need... I think we need to have tests. We need to start getting tests for basic understanding of things to allow people to even vote, honestly. They just need, to vote, to run for politics, to even have a civil servant job. We need to have basic intelligence tests, basic understanding of economics. Because how else are we going to weed out all this shit? We're just going to keep repeating the same mistakes again and again and again, as every generation thinks they know better than the previous one and repeats the same rubbish. This has prompted many smaller landlords to exit the market and to be replaced by institutional landlords with new stock at higher rents. Oh boy. So they're getting rid of the mum and dad investors and it's going the big institution. It'll be like all the people saying BlackRock will come in. Shit. It'll be the super funds. It'll be the super funds using your money to price you out of the housing market. Oh boy. So the previous generation who got into housing, they didn't have to have their money stolen away and locked away in super. So now you've got these institutional super funds either run by the unions or the banks. Then they'll start investing in these rent-to-own bloody houses. And then they'll be competing with young families who are trying to get into the housing sector. Oh, it couldn't be any more perfect. This is what happens when you artificially intervene in the market. All this bullshit comes together and screws the individual. This is what happens when you do things for the greater good. When you sacrifice individual responsibility to take care of yourself. These dumb plebs, they can't save. We better force them to save. And now you're going to have people that are struggling to even afford a house to live in. Isn't it awesome? This is socialism, guys. This is a paternalistic government right here. This is what they do to you. A long-standing complaint against the RPZ system is that new rental properties or tenancies are excluded from the restrictions and can be put on the market at any rent. Oh, this is a complete mess. The real losers are tenants at the lower end of the market, Mr. Power said. The report commissioned by the Institute of Professional Auctioneers and Valuers and the Irish Property Owners Association concludes that the Irish rental market is not functioning in an effective manner, and the RPZs are undermining the market and not achieving what they are intended to achieve. See, this is the thing. High rent prices are a signal. They are a signal that supply needs to increase, that supply isn't meeting the needs of the people. That's what it is. They should be an incentive, a signal for people to get stock on the market, to build, because they can make money from that. But it's not just the evil landlords, guys. It's also the not in my backyard crowd. It's also the bloody councils inhibiting development. It's also changes to the construction code, which is adding costs for new builds. All of these things are coming together. It's also immigration shooting up to the moon. New properties coming to the rental stock, even though they are in a rent pressure zone, are free to charge whatever rent the market will accept. In theory, this is aimed at introducing new properties into the rental stock, the report said. However, instead of doing that, it has encouraged landlords at the bottom of the market to leave as they cannot charge market rent, to be replaced by properties with much higher rents. Oh, shit. Oh, well, there you go. The road to hell is paved in good intentions. And these idiot politicians probably thought this was a brilliant idea. You can't beat the market, guys. You can't. However, instead of doing that, it has encouraged landlords... Yep, we've read that already. The report also claims that taxation treatment of private landlords compared to institutional landlords was acting as a serious disincentive for private landlord participation in the market. It's almost like the whole "you will own nothing and be happy" mantra, isn't it? We need to get these individuals out of this sector. It needs to be institutional. The share of private investor participation in the mortgage market has fallen from 19.9% of total mortgage lending in 2006 to 1.4% in 2021, it said. If private landlords continue to exit the market, the situation is going to get worse. According to the property website Daft.ie, annual rent price inflation rose to a 5-year high of almost 12% in the first quarter of 22. Daft also noted that there were just 851 properties available to rent nationally on its website as of May 1 last record low. Yeah, I remember looking at that. I mean, Ireland is just, it's a whole other world. In his report, Mr. Power suggests that the majority of landlords exiting the market are those who in the past charged rents that were less than market rates and are now only able to minimally increase rates on their properties because they are subject to RPZ rules. Mr. Power, who presented research attesting to the difficulties faced by smaller landlords, said private, non-institutional landlords are finding the current regulatory and taxation environment very challenging. This is causing an exit of private landlords from the market and is reducing the supply of rental properties and putting upward pressure on rents at a time when significant increases are required to satisfy demand and create a functioning residential property market, he said. So there we have it, guys. Well, let's have a bit of a talk about this one. What can I say? Our politicians and our elected leaders need to learn from the past. Although if we have people sprouting these ludicrous and stupid policy ideas, they shouldn't be in Parliament. I think the populace needs to understand the rubbish that they're voting for. This is green policy, guys. If you vote for them, you should be embarrassed. If you have friends who vote for them, you should be embarrassed. I'm embarrassed because I know people in my profession, architects, love voting for them. They eat up all this bullshit because they got absolutely no understanding of economics. This is simple supply demand. You screw with the market, it slaps back. You stuff around small investors, they're going to leave. You're going to get the institutions in there. This is not what we want. We want individual liberty, individual freedom, individual responsibility. Oh, maybe that's not what Australians want. Tell me what you think, guys. This type of stuff gets me angry. As always, thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Check out HeiseBim and Heise Does. And if you're a fan and enjoy the content I create and discuss on the channel, you can support us on YouTube or Patreon. Use our referral links, buy our pocket squares, or call us if you need an architect. Take care, everyone. Have a great day. And don't vote for rent controls. Bloody hell.